Hey guys, today I thought I would talk a little bit about the ZMR180 from FPV Model. I got it as a gift from my wife on Christmas. Came in this wonderful little Christmas box from FPV Model. I got the 2204 version FPV as well. So it came with everything absolutely necessary to build this model. I have added just a couple of my own parts. We'll talk about that more later. What I want to do in this video is just give you a rundown of the quad itself, the frame, some of the mods that I did, the tricks I used to build this, and some of the tips to make it a little easier to build. Keep it clean, nice and neat. So we'll get started. I'm going to give you a video down of the build. Unfortunately, I have a lot of it built, but I had to go back and unbuild a bunch of it because I had an issue with one of the ESCs and motors. We'll get into more of that, but I'll take it apart, go through some of the specs, and we'll talk more. Thanks. We'll start with the frame. First thing I did, as you'll notice and see here, we have, I'll use this as a pointer, red on the edges. I did this myself. What I used to do that, I literally just painted it with some testers. Yes, testers I believe is what it's called. Enamel. So there's that. I of course used the red version. So just painted that on with a brush, let it sit overnight. It's just a careful, delicate painting, not a big deal. I also did that on this part of the frame. Looks very good. Secondly, while I have it up, I want to get the tester in here, the micrometer. Take a look. We're looking at about, yeah, that's almost just over 3 millimeter base. And let's take a look here. Looks like a 1.5 millimeters on the, yeah, about 1.5. That's not zeroed out. Great. Let's try it again. Let's see what we have. 1.5, folks. So that's the thickness. It's great carbon fiber. The cuts are great, not sharp, looks good. I mean, they catch, but it's not gonna cut you. And I just went through and did that. You'll notice my first mod right here. This is to hold my GoPro style, the Xiaomi Yi camera on the front. This is going to be my little vibration dampener here. This is just a piece of foam that I drilled holes into that match the holes here on the front of the quadcopter, and then put a rubber band through this way, and then I'll wrap the rubber band around this, and of course a few more rubber bands. I'll give you that video later of how it's actually mounted on there once it's built. Maybe I can take a shot at the end of this video with a different camera, because the camera that will be on this is this one right here. Anyway, so that's what I like about the frame. Wide arms for the 2204 motor to be somewhat protected in any sort of accident. Very impressed with it so far. We'll see how it works in a crash. Like I said, I haven't flown this, so we'll have to give it a durability test. But as far as I can see, this thing's going to be able to take a beating. Next, you'll see that I have a motor off. Unfortunately, during the build portion of this, I got everything kind of hooked up, ready to go, and I had the motors on wrong. So I switched them around, resoldered, and then boom, I smoked a motor. I don't know if you can see in here the blackness in that motor, blackness in this motor. Ran another test on another motor, and sure enough, that started smoking too. So I called FPV Model and said, hey, what's going on here? I just smoked from the motor, and after some further testing, it was the ESC that was bad. Could have been due to my soldering. They decided to send me, after I took just a couple pictures of what had happened, a motor and an ESC, and nice of them, because I told them 2 motors. They actually sent me another. I don't know where it is. Here we go. They sent me another motor as well. So we're going to be installing the motor today after a closer look of what's going on the actual build. So I have the NAS 32 board already pre-built, and we'll talk about that more. I'm just going to unhook the NAS board. I had to solder the pins on. I only soldered the pins I wanted. We'll talk about that later. We're going to drop down to the wonderful PBD board, Power Distribution Board. So, how I installed this. Power distribution is working wonderfully. I really like it because I can hook my camera directly to the transmitter. So, the transmitter that came with it is this Amway, and it, I believe, yeah, 200 milliwatt, 6 to 28 volt. What is neat about this board is there is a voltage transmitter and a camera board. The camera board, you can run a solder. Let me find a better pointer here. The solder on here actually decides if it's going to run 12 or 5 volt. So as I get closer here, you'll see that I soldered the 12 volt pad, and then I messed up and soldered the 5 volt pad because I used my own camera, and we'll talk about that in a second. But then I desoldered that with some braid, added the solder on the 12, and sure enough it gave me 12 volts. I've checked everything with a multimeter. This is definitely pushing out 12 volts. And what I did with the camera, as you can see, directly black on the negative, red, positive, yellow in the camera. For the voltage transmitter, it came with this gray cable and a black cable for power. So I ran the black cable, which gave me a red and black wire. I hooked it up on the black and positive. It also gave me a bunch of other wires on this side. You'll see there is a black, white, yellow, black, and red. Yellow's definitely video out. White, I believe, is audio, if I remember right. I'm not necessarily needing the audio, so I didn't worry about it. And the black, of course, is ground, and this black over here is ground. When I stripped away the gray cable, I found that the black here turns into a braid around the entire cable structure. So I wrapped that up nice and neat, twisted it together, and also soldered both blacks onto the negative side of the voltage transmitter. That makes a nice hop from video transmitter to camera on the yellow and allows the video to go through. I have tested the video. It works wonderfully. The camera, I decided to use my own that I picked up at Surveillance Zone, I think is the website. I'll show you what came with it. I have a camera that can be built with it. The specs are in here somewhere, and I don't quite remember what the specs. It's a Sony IFO, I don't even know how to pronounce it. PAL version. Doesn't bother me. My goggles do both, and you just put it all together. Very similar, but I had a little bit better of camera, so I thought I would stick that on myself. And a lot of people I see questioning how to mount the camera. Me, I've decided with good the old-fashioned hot glue. That's how I put it on here. Just got it centered, held it there, and started squeezing some glue into the centers there. You can see I let the glue come up into each hole, and it holds pretty solid. I've done that with some of my other quadcopters, and I'm quite impressed with its durability that way. The nice thing about this setup too is it's designed to sit back like that at an angle, and on this you'll see that's how it fits in. So there's a good angle for flying a little faster than normal. Alright, so there's the video transmitter and how it was hooked up. Came with a wonderful little clover leaf antenna. Seems like it's going to work well for me. However, I believe this was SMA. I'm more used to the RP SMA on all my transmitters because I've gone with the Hobby King Boss Cam stuff in the past, and that tends to be RP SMA connections. So this was a little different to get an antenna like that, but that's fine. I have a bunch of adapters to make everything work if necessary. Of course, what came in the kit works together. Going back to the quadcopter itself, I then cut the motor leads really short. I'm going to go ahead and kick on my solder gun now because I do want to do some soldering, and I'll do it with you guys watching. So on the motors, I cut them pretty darn short. The motor leads, let's take a look. We'll open the box and we'll see how the motor comes out. In the package, you get a nice little package full of bits. Those little bits happen to be the prop holder, some banana connector style stuff, bullet connector, sorry, and wonderful little screws that I just throw on my magnetic dish so I don't lose them. Great. And we'll just put everything in here. And some heat shrink that we're not going to use today either, so we'll set those back there. Move this back around. The motor itself. These motors are nice. As far as I can see, I like them. I've done some reading online. People seem to be pretty happy with them. Let's see, we have a 2300 kV MC2204 by FPV model. This, by the way, was the counterclockwise version. That's what I asked for them to resend me, and that's what they resent me. You can tell by the black cap. Here's the burnt out motor. There's the black cap. So I went with leads about that short, so that's what we're going to do. So soldering on the power board worked very easily. Everything is plainly marked on the power board as well. It just says to put things on the positive, negative, negative, positive, positive, negative, negative, positive. Red is positive, black is negative. Pretty easy to do. On this side, so this side was the camera side. On this side we have a 12 volt out and a 5 volt out. I soldered a cable that I made just by sticking some old wire from a servo, I believe, in, and arranged it so the black was on the outside, positive there. That's going to allow me to plug into my naze board and power it. So I'm powering it with a 5 volt out here. The rest is just in the pads. These two pads I am not using. This will give out whatever the battery that you hook up to it is. Came with some great little plastic wrap. I thought I'd give that a try. Keep the cable a little more organized. Let's move that out of the way. We'll do some quick soldering. Oh, I want to keep this here. Push this over to the side, out of the way as much as possible because we're going to heat this up. I'm using the Hobby King solder gun. This thing is beautiful. When I say solder gun, it's that Yahoo 936, the solder station. Some of the best money I ever spent. Better than the stupid little Walmart brands of solder guns. Those always die. Take care of the tips and buy some extra tips, and it works wonderfully. I believe Bruce from RC Model Reviews did a great review on these a while back. So let's heat that up and just pull. There we go. That came off. Pull. Come on. There we go. Oh. There. So this was the bad ESC. We're going to get rid of that. We'll use that as a marker actually to figure out how to cut the new ESC. When I do a project, I see that I tend to let everything become a big mess on my bench because I have a trouble cleaning up after myself. So we're going to need to remove the ESC, some of the shielding, so we can solder directly to the ESC. Now, reverse spin and regular spin all have something to do with one of these wires. If you want it to spin the other way, you just switch any two of the wires, and that works. So I know that for some reason directly like this has been for the clockwise ones, and then twisted over, two of them switched will do the counterclockwise. So this has to be twisted. So that's what we're going to do with that. Here, my little trick I did is I got a little razor blade. I think I used scissors last time I did this, but nice and easy against the shrink wrap. Just cut it. And what I'm doing is just cutting a nice little spot for me to be able to pull that open and have room to solder like that. So now we'll just cut this little flap off. Doesn't need to be there. Beautiful. Beautiful. Move this over here. Pinch with the hands. And we'll start. Give this a little tap. And just pull that out just like that. Let me turn the heat up just a little bit on my thing. Get some wonderful flux that I got. Dr. Marty's. I picked this up at the Weak Signals Toledo Expo from a booth. He gave me a free sample at one point, and after using that free sample I went back. This is some great soldering flux. Love how it works. Keeps everything nice and pretty, and it definitely takes some good solder. So we're just going to use this solder like that and let things flow together. I don't know, can you see what I'm doing here? Just flowing some solder onto each end, just like that. Beautiful. Plenty of solder onto the motor. So now let's solder this on. Just a nice little touch. Hold. Beautiful. So this motor, what I also did was mark each motor. So this is the second motor. This is the third motor, and this is motor number 4. So this is motor number 1 that was bad. Take a look at the length here. If this were to be screwed on here, we've got plenty of length. Black. Give it some room to be able to wiggle. This seems like it's going to be plenty long. If we cut it right here, it might actually be too long. Or not long enough, who knows. I probably should have left a little more slack. So I'd recommend to you use more slack if you can. I'm using a little bit different stripper now, just because I can. Great. Use the same technique to solder flow. Move this back out of the way. So this is what we're going to do for all 4 motors, or what we should have done for all 4 motors. Just gives you a good idea of how easy soldering and putting this is on. I'm going to turn that temperature down again just a little bit. I'm running at about 400 degrees Celsius, or about 775 in Fahrenheit. Alright, so now let's be extremely careful. We have a positive and a negative. Looks like everything's right. Let's just compare it to this one. This is on the positive, that's on that. It looks right. Alright, so on the board it's labeled negative and positive. So let's give him a touch. See if we can cleaning off my tip a bit. Coming back, give it a little solder, just a touch again. Where did I place my solder? See, this is where I get all out of sorts. Just give it a little teeny bead in the end. That helps things flow to where they're supposed to go. So I have a plastic standoff here that came with the kit. Well, actually, they came with white ones. I used black because that's what I prefer. Thought it would look just a little better on the kit itself, or on the quad itself. So that's what I did. I'm gonna just use some needle nose pliers to give myself a little bit better hand here. Push that up a little higher. Touch that. That'll melt together because I had pre-soldered the pads. Of course, it was pre-soldered because there was already solder on it. Let's give this one another melt. Not a fan of that solder job at all, but it'll work. In fact, I just wasn't running enough heat or something on any of these. Soldering can still be meticulous and a bit of a pain in the butt, but it works. So, once I got everything on the board soldered, I put in my own standoffs. They're nice little plastic standoffs. They do come with the kit. I just wanted to use black. So now let's run this up under the and around the quad, or under the board. Let's see here. This went through this way. Let's see, maybe I can use this to push it. That's going to be a tight fit. Let's just see if I can unscrew these by hand. Holy cow. I'm going to just lift this board up kind of out of the position there so that I can run a motor cable on, around, and through. Goes through. Use this as my tweezers. There we go. Got them. Oh, of course. All right. There we go. Shove this back down in so that it fits nice and flat, and we're not sitting on anything we shouldn't, like a wire. I'm gonna stick this here. Looks like everything is fitting 100% flat again. Come over here, push on that down, screw these back on. So the process you saw of me just putting the ESC, you do that with every motor. Okay? Okay. So we're going to screw that in. You know what I did? My dumbass soldered the old bad motor on. Well, while I fix that, you guys don't have to watch. Here's the new motor. I'm an idiot. I thought those ends looked soldered. Oh my gosh, this is what happens when I pay more attention to a video than I do my build process. I thought that flowed on there really well. Well, shit. Alright. Let me replace that, and we'll come back to it. Okay, sorry. Once you're done making stupid mistakes and you get the right motors in the right spots, that's going to be better. That's the new motor on the new ESC. That's good. Now we just need to mount it on there. The kit comes with a pack of larger screws for motor mounts and standoffs. So typically I would soak the end or dip the end of this into a, check my Allen wrench here, that's the right size, great. I would typically dip this into a Loctite, usually the blue or the medium, whatever it is. And we're just going to flip this over and see how well that's lined up. Get the holes lined up correctly and screw that in without knocking over the camera. Notice that's not centered yet, so I put it in lightly so that I can move it around to get that to be about center and all the screw holes showing, and then we'll tighten it down a little. I'll go back around and use Loctite on all of these. I've only put one in, as you can see, just because, you know, preliminary testing, all that good stuff. Once we know it's working, we'll be much happier, and I'll lock them all down with Loctite. Okay, flip the quad back over. Now we put on the cap. So the cap came with the screws that you need to use. That's the little ones. Some people use props that this would use that would just then hold the prop down. I believe you'd screw it in like that with the bigger, or with the screws, but I don't know. That's not what I'm doing. I'm doing this. So you set this on top, nice and easy. Put the right hex key in, or Allen wrench, or whatever you want to call these things. Again, for time, I'm not using Loctite, but you should. So just screw 4 of these in. These are the screws that came with the kit. Let's get that in there, give it a little twist to tighten it up. They're all the same length, I do believe, so not an issue. Yeah. Nice and tight. And then, of course, since it's counterclockwise, clockwise won't work. Go that way. Clockwise tightens that up. Alright, keep in mind when building, the front of the quad frame on the bottom plate has the camera holders. And the front of the quad on this one has the camera holders and the notch, of course. So that's how that's going to sit on standoffs that are provided. I got the red standoffs. That's again why I went with the red enamel on the edges. Alright, Naze board. Let's talk about this just a little bit. Naze board, this is a nice one. I put Beta Flight on here, and we'll see how that works. I know I'm not using PPM or PWM or whatever. I just know this is the setup that works, and that's the setup I'm going to continue to use at this point. Sometime I will experiment with the other, but for now, this is how we're going to do this. So on the board itself, if we look closely, there's an arrow right there pointing that way. That means that's the front of the quad, which this board itself is set up nicely because I don't have to then do any yaw correction in the setup to get the micro connector on the side. On my other quad, for a long time, I had to work that connector in to make any settings to the board a real pain. So these are Opto ESCs. Let's take a look at the Opto. Oh, before putting this on, let's look at the bottom. Here the symbols tell us what's negative, positive, and signal. So signal's on the inside of the board, negative's on the outside of the board, and we'll do that. I also soldered the buzzer on, and then of course all the controls here. And the controls here start with ground, 5 volt. This will send 5 volt out to the receiver and the ground, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ports. So that's what I did there. Put that on. Like I said, the buzzer soldered. We know, what did we say? The outside is negative and the inside is signal. So outside negative. Boom, just like that. Put that on the very end. This is motor 1, 2, 3, 4. I skipped 6 and put 7 in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and on 6 I am supplying the power to the board, and then the board will supply the power out. Instead of the ESCs, if they were non-opto, they would be supplying. So And before we put the board all the way in, I'm going to pull it off one last time, bring all my cables up, over, and around just like that for cable management. There we go. Underneath and through. That's why we have those standoffs there. That's gorgeous. Now that we have that on there, before I even plug it in, let's take a look. Let's get this on the other side. Cable management is very important when building this tight. So come around, plug that back in. There we go. So now we just screw on our nuts, again provided in the kit. I love how they thought of everything in this kit. I mean, down to shrink wrap if you needed it. Very nice. They even provided the end, the XTC 60 end. I mean, they've got their act together when giving you a full-blown, you can build it yourself kit. I appreciate them for doing so. Okay. One thing I did notice when I soldered the pins on, I now don't have much room to get these darn nuts on all of them. Even this one sits really close to the micro connector or mini connector. So pain in the rear end to tighten up. I'll probably fast forward through the rest of this. Alright, so we now have the naze board on. I plugged the power into it, and now we've got to get the motor lines run here. So we're going to look for the unmarked one. That's number 3. That's not it. That's number 4. That's number 3. Number 2. Again, I just put little dots to tell me what motor it was. When I say number 1, 2, and 3, I made myself a fun little chart. This is the chart. I'm holding that correctly for you, I believe. That's upside down. I don't know. Maybe it's this way. Anyway, let's do this. Forward, and then we start at the bottom and go counterclockwise. 1, 2, and then over here 3, 4. That's how motors are labeled. I also have the direction of each prop spin that it's supposed to be. So that's my little cheat sheet that I made a long time ago. So that's what I use. So motor 1. Let's plug in motor 1. It will be the one I haven't marked with 1 dot. We know the negative is the furthest. So let's get that on there. What a pain. That's a real tight fit, but it is on there. Number 2. Over just like that. Nice and snug, but not too snug. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. I like what I see. So the moment of truth. We've got to power this up and see if we're going to smoke anything again. See what happens. Moment of truth. Plug it in. Nothing's touching anything. No smoke. No nothing. I've already programmed the board. Okay? Just keep that in mind. I do not have a bind to my transmitter. That's a problem. I'm going to turn off the transmitter and fix that real quick. I know what I did. There we go. Awesome. So that's now in. I can see everything is running. The lights. I'm transmitting FPV. Let's see if I have. There it is. Throttle locks off. Let's make sure I am spinning the right way. So a good way to do that is a little piece of tape. I take a little bit of painter's masking tape, just attach it. We'll attach it like that. I'm going to look at my cheat sheet here. My cheat sheet says this is motor 1 and it needs to be spinning this way, so hopefully it will. Let's find out. Looks like it is. Sure is. Awesome. Things are looking great. Nothing's smoking this time. Isn't that awesome? All right. Well, thank you. All right, switch to a little bit different view to finish this build off. We are on home stretch here. Going to use the bag of screws that they provided. Pull a couple out for now. Here are the standoffs that they provided. A couple of these out for now. And we'll move the top plate over here. We'll start with the bottom, I think, is where I want to start. Thread locker. This is a very important piece. I'm using the blue 242 from Loctite. I just pour a little bit on a bag, a little bit of a baggie there, so I can dip my screws into it. And I just roll it in there a little bit, just like that. See how that? Get a nice little blue bead on there. That should be plenty, if not more than necessary. I'm going to start here in the front, stick that right through, and place this on top and screw it on. Going to do that with everything. Alright, there you have it. The standoffs are now on. I realized through this that my video transmitter, I got too much wire. I want it to go through the center, so I'm just going to unplug this piece here. Just like that. And slide it right through the top there. Alright folks, sorry about that. My battery died. I did rerun the camera wire back underneath both boards and around and through and plugged it back in. Alright folks, now that we have that screwed in, let's put on the top plate. So I'm going to take the top plate. I did remove, I had some of this fancy little stuff on all the receiver cables. Don't need it because I need to spin this around and get it to sit upside down like so, just underneath everything. I think that's going to be the ticket right there, just like that. So that's how we're going to keep that going. Was thinking about putting a little tape there, but we don't want to do that just yet. Or not tape, but Velcro, but we don't want to do that just yet. We're just going to leave that out. Stick the arm way through the back plate hole, just like that. I'm going to leave it turned and the switches accessible. Make sure this has plenty of room. Looks like it does. Get this to sit in with the camera there. Get everybody's plates in order. Looks like that isn't sitting in there the way it should just yet. That'll be fine. Screw it in. Alright folks, there you have it. Not completely screwed in, not completely taken care of, but I believe she's gonna fly like a dream. There we go. Of course we'll run these antennas out this hole here. Show you a little trick with some zip ties and some shrink wrap. You can get it 2 zip ties, 1 on each piece here. You can then shrink wrap it to the zip tie in a V formation that works great for your receiver setup. Alright guys, real quick for you, the antenna trick. We have antennas coming out of here for the receiver. Just wanted to do a quick tip on this. I did this on my other quad, on my 250. This is how it'll end up looking. I've now seen it all over the place when I showed the first time on that video. It now seems to be a pretty popular concept for people to do. So let's see if we can get this going. That went right in. So I just put a zip tie around near, make sure I'm not zipping anything. I'm just zip tying directly to the frame itself, just like that. Let's make sure this is going to fit in between. This will be a tight fit, but it'll work. It'll probably crunch them a bit. That's okay. I'm going to just bend that down. I don't care. I'm going to do the same. Take another zip tie. Now, I believe I came in like this. This one's going to be a little harder to get because the naze board is in the way on this side. So reach in, pull it out. There we go. Right through. I'm not zipping anything but the frame once again. Lean it before you tighten it all the way. There we go. Push it down. So far that's still able to move, and this is still able to move. That's great. And just cut it about, oh, let's say there. Seems good. Same over here. About the same height. There seems good. Awesome. Now, a little bit of shrink wrap. Test it. That's about the right length. Cut 2 at that length. Slide the antenna through the shrink tube and then the zip tie. Give yourself just a little slack, push it in just a little bit. There you go, done with that. Same on the other side. Antenna through the zip tie, or through the shrink wrap and then through the zip tie. Push it down in there to give yourself a little slack. Boom. Find a handy dandy lighter or heater and just shrink it. Cool beans. Now we're shrunk. Plenty of room for things to move if necessary, but still there. Holds that up out of the props. Isn't that nice? Beautiful. Thanks again, guys. Appreciate you watching. There is the after product. You're awesome. Remember to subscribe.